I I never thought I'd be standing here telling you this story. If someone had told me years ago that I would break my husband's heart, destroy our family with a single mistake, I would have laughed it off, dismissed it as impossible. But here I am, staring into the abyss, asking myself how it all went so horribly wrong. It's hard to even know where to begin. To put into words the pain of betraying someone who trusted you more than anyone ever could. The man who stood beside me, loved me, supported me through every hardship. And yet, I broke him. I shattered everything he believed in. Let me take you back. To the moment my husband found out. To the moment I thought I could escape the consequences of my choices. Only to realize there was no escaping this reality. That moment, when my world turned upside down. When my husband found out that I was carrying someone else's child. A child that wasn't his, but his to raise. What do you say to someone who loves you only to realize that you've been lying to them for months? Lying about something as big as this? What could I say to make him understand? To make him feel like the world wasn't falling apart beneath his feet? I thought I could hide it. I thought he would never find out. But when the truth came crashing down, I knew there was no turning back. I never planned for this to happen. I never set out to hurt my husband. It just happened. It started innocently enough. A simple flirtation here and there. A few stolen moments of attention. The feeling of being desired by someone who wasn't him. But once that seed was planted, it grew into something I couldn't control. And when it was too late to turn back, I realized I was pregnant with a child that wasn't my husband's. How do you look at the man who loved you, the man who trusted you with his heart, and tell him that? How do you confess that you've been unfaithful and worse, that he's going to raise another man's child as his own? That was the moment I knew there was no easy way out. The guilt, the shame, it all hit me at once. But even in that moment, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how he would react. I thought he might shout. I thought he might throw me out. Never look at me the same way again. But what happened next? Well, that's something I'll never forget. He didn't shout. He didn't yell. He didn't storm out. Instead, he did something far worse. He just looked at me, and I saw it in his eyes. Betrayal. Pain. The devastation of knowing that everything he had believed in, everything he had thought was true, was a lie. And still, he stayed. He didn't leave me. He stayed, even though I had taken everything from him. It's a kind of pain I can't even describe. Knowing that your partner is suffering because of your actions, yet knowing that you can't take it back. There's no way to undo what I had done. I couldn't take the lies back. I couldn't take the affair back. And I couldn't take the child that wasn't his out of the equation. And then came the question, the one that echoed in my head, over and over again. Could he raise a child that wasn't his? Could he love a child that wasn't his blood? He never asked me directly, but I saw it in his eyes. He was afraid. Afraid of what it would mean for our family, for his own heart. But he didn't walk away. He didn't leave me to pick up the pieces of my own mistakes. He stayed. The thing about infidelity, about betraying someone you love, is that it doesn't just destroy the relationship. It destroys everything. It breaks trust, it shatters security, and it forces you to confront yourself in ways you never wanted to. It was painful watching my husband struggle with the fact that he had to raise a child that wasn't his, a child that carried the burden of my mistakes. It broke him to know that the family he had envisioned, the future he thought he was building, was no longer possible. But he didn't walk away. He didn't abandon me. Instead, he tried. He tried with everything he had to make it work. To love the child that wasn't his. To be there for me. Even when I had given him every reason not to be. And as much as I wished I could take back my mistakes, I couldn't. The only thing I could do was watch as he loved this child. As he did everything a father should do, even though he wasn't the biological father. There were moments when I thought he would break. Moments when I saw the pain in his eyes. When I saw the doubt creep in. When I saw him question everything. But still, he tried. And the guilt I felt watching him give so much of himself to something that wasn't even his. It was unbearable. I wanted to scream at myself. I wanted to shout at the woman who thought she could have it all, who thought she could deceive him and escape the consequences. But that's the thing with infidelity. It's not just the person you hurt, it's the entire family. The ripple effects spread far and wide. And you don't realize how much damage you've caused until it's too late. It wasn't just about me and my husband anymore. It was about the child. The child I had brought into this world. The child I had condemned him to raise, to love. I wondered if the child would ever know the truth, if they would ever understand what my husband had done for them. Because in the end, he was the one who had to decide. Would he love a child that wasn't his? Would he raise them as his own despite everything? And what about me? What did I owe him now? I had already taken everything from him. How could I make it right? I couldn't. I couldn't undo the pain, the betrayal, the shattered trust. All I could do was watch as he carried the weight of my decisions and try to be the woman he needed me to be, even though I knew I would never be able to fully make up for what I had done. I still don't know why he stayed. I don't know what kept him here, what made him keep trying when every part of him must have been screaming to leave. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was the commitment he had made when he vowed to stand by me. Or maybe, just maybe, he stayed because he still believed in us. Even after everything I had done. Even after everything we had lost. But that's the thing with love, isn't it? It's not always easy. It's not always perfect. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's broken. And sometimes it means staying. Even when everything inside of you tells you to walk away. In the end, I learned a painful truth. You can't escape the consequences of your actions. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you wish you could turn back time, you have to face the aftermath. And sometimes the person you hurt the most is the one who loves you the most. I can't change the past. I can't undo the mistakes I made. But I can say this. My husband faced the unimaginable, and he stayed. He stayed, and he loved. And in that, I saw the true meaning of strength and forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, things weren't easy. It would have been easier if he had just walked away, if he had packed his things and left me to pick up the pieces of my own disaster. But that didn't happen, and in a way I was grateful for that, even if it meant facing something much more difficult than I ever imagined. My husband didn't confront me with anger or resentment, at least not outwardly. There were no heated arguments, no violent outbursts. Instead, there was a quiet, painful distance between us. He was there physically, but emotionally, he was somewhere else. Somewhere I couldn't reach, and I couldn't blame him. I had destroyed everything, the trust, the foundation we had built together. I watched as he silently processed everything. He did what needed to be done, taking care of me when I felt like I didn't deserve it, taking care of the child that was now a part of our lives, even though it wasn't his. He held the baby in his arms, and I could see how much it tore him up. But he did it. Every day he chose to be there. He didn't just go through the motions. He tried to love the child. Even when his heart screamed that this wasn't fair, this wasn't right, how could I watch him suffer like that and not feel the weight of my choices? How could I stand by and let him carry this pain for me when it was me who had caused it all? The hardest part wasn't just dealing with the infidelity. It was seeing how much my husband was hurting. It was seeing how deeply he loved the child, even though that child wasn't his flesh and blood. And I couldn't escape the guilt. It was suffocating. There were nights I cried in the dark, feeling as though I was drowning in my own shame. There were moments when I wanted to reach out, beg him to forgive me, but I knew it was too late. He had given me everything, and I had broken it. What could I possibly offer him now that would make any of it better? I kept wondering how long he would stay, how long he would put himself through this. He never said it out loud. But I could feel it. I could feel the weight of the question hanging in the air. How long until he can't do this anymore? And then came the day that shook me to my core. The day he finally spoke. I had been waiting for it, dreading it, hoping it would never come. But it did. He sat me down, and for the first time since everything had happened, I saw the raw emotion in his eyes. I saw the hurt that had been building inside of him for so long. He wasn't angry. He wasn't looking to punish me. He wasn't trying to make me feel guilty, even though he had every right to. He was simply broken. His heart was shattered, and there was nothing I could say to fix it. And still he looked at me and said, I'm trying. I'm trying to make this work. But I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Those words, they hit me like a freight train. I had been so focused on my own guilt, on how I could fix what I had broken, that I hadn't truly stopped to think about how much this was costing him. I hadn't realized how much pain he was carrying just to try and make it work. For the first time, I saw the depth of what I had done to him. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the loss of trust, the fear, the doubts, the feeling that no matter how hard he tried, he would always be reminded of what I had done. And the child who would never truly belong to him, but whom he loved with everything he had. It was unbearable to watch him struggle. To watch him try to make a family out of the broken pieces I had left behind. I wanted to help him, to ease his pain, but I couldn't. I couldn't fix the things that I had broken. And then, for the first time, I saw the possibility of him walking away. I saw the way his eyes hardened, the way he began to pull away from me, not just physically, but emotionally. And I knew. I knew that I couldn't blame him if he left. He had every right to walk away, but he didn't. In the days that followed, there was a shift. We started to talk, really talk. I poured out my heart to him, telling him everything I had been too ashamed to admit. I told him how much I regretted my choices, how sorry I was, how much I still loved him. I couldn't change the past, but I wanted to make a future with him if he would let me. And still, he stayed. But the truth was, even though he stayed, things were never the same. Our relationship was never the same. How could it be? How could we go back to the way things were before the affair? Before the child? Before the broken trust? It's a funny thing, trust. Once it's gone, it's hard to get it back. We worked hard at it day after day, but I could see it in his eyes, the doubt, the insecurity, the fear that I would betray him again. And every time he looked at the child, I knew it wasn't easy. He was trying for me. But the cracks were there. The cracks were always there, no matter how hard we tried to fix them. But that's the thing about relationships, isn't it? They're never perfect, they're messy, and sometimes we make mistakes that we can't take back. Sometimes we hurt the people we love more than we ever thought possible. And sometimes the people we hurt are the ones who choose to stay and fight for us, even when they don't have to. I'll never be able to fully explain why he stayed. I'll never understand why he chose to forgive me. But what I do know is this: he loved me enough to try. He loved me enough to fight through the pain, through the heartache, and through the fear. And I'll never forget that. In the end, my husband faced the unimaginable. He faced the pain of my infidelity, of raising a child that wasn't his, and of having his heart broken in a way that few people ever experience. And yet, he stayed. He stayed. Even when every part of him wanted to run, he stayed and he loved. And that is a love I will never take for granted again.